Like cherries and dark chocolate, this variant on the venerable chocolate chip cookie is a delightful dessert combining the two. I'm Marcy McDonald with Pacific Northwest Suburban Homesteading, and I invented this recipe the other night on a whim. Now I share it with you. The other night, I was inspired to invent my own cookie recipe. I saw the back of the package of dried cranberries, and there was a recipe on there. And I started thinking, wouldn't dark chocolate chip cookies with dried cherries be really good? I've been baking for a long time. After studying several recipes, and knowing something about baking and the science of baking and seeing a lot of consistency amongst all of those recipes, I was able to put together a recipe, try it, and it turned out extremely well first time out. This is the recipe I made up the other night to share with you. I hope you will enjoy it. One thing about dried cherries is they're larger than raisins or dried cranberries or craisins. I think they're a little big. I don't want big chunks like this in my cookies, so I'm gonna chop them up a little bit. Not too finely, but in the smaller pieces, more like the size of a raisin. The cherries also vary in size. The one on the left is a different brand from the other three. Even within the same brand, the fruit is different. So I think cutting them in half is about right. It'll take forever, so I think I'm just gonna kind of chop them. The other night, Scott actually did the cutting for me. These are really sticky. So those look like they're pretty good. It's not a big deal if they're a little big. Pretty sure there's a better way of doing this, but experiment, find out. Feel free to leave them whole if they're small enough and you like the size. I just wanted better cherry distribution through the cookies. We start with a half cup, and this is 3/4 of a cup. Some of the cookies didn't really have any of the cherry in them, and they're dark chocolate chip cherry cookies. So since cherry, you want cherry. As I mentioned, the cherries are quite sticky. Unlike raisins, which often can be quite separate from one another, these clump together more. I'm going to use the 1/4 cup of flour that we reserved to mix in the cherries to help kind of separate them from one another so they will distribute better throughout the batter rather than being in clumps, where some cookies have a lot of cherries and some have little to none. So I'll help coat them. Just add a little bit of flour at a time. Mix in with the cherries. It doesn't have to be the full 1/4 cup. I just made it easier because the recipe calls for a total of 2 1/4 cups of flour. You know, for convenience, I just arbitrarily picked the 1/4 cup because it doesn't matter because it'll go integrated with the rest of the flour anyway. Now that we've prepared the cherries, we need to cream the butter and the sugar together. I set the butter out on the counter to warm up earlier. I actually remembered. The softer butter is easier to do this with. You need 1 cup of butter. 1 cup of salted butter. There's a lot of question about salted versus unsalted. Because we buy almost exclusively salted butter, I used what we had, and I just simply removed salt from an added ingredient. The more precise way to do things when it really matters is to have unsalted, so you control exactly how much salt you want in the recipe. I've already tested the recipe and it turned out great. Do whichever you need to do. I don't actually know the proportions of salt to butter. I'm just using 1 cup salted butter. I'm starting with just the butter first. I'm going to add 1/2 cup of regular white granulated sugar, 1 cup of brown sugar packed, and scrape the sides of the bowl. You don't have to have a stand mixer for this. Handheld mixer will work just fine. I don't really recommend doing by hand, but if you're less lazy than me, go for it. The stand mixer was a gift. More correctly, I used gift cards from our wedding to buy one, because I'd always wanted one of these fancy mixers. But I've made plenty of things with just a hand mixer. I have one of those too. Some things it actually works better for, but for things like this, I like the stand mixer. Let's add the 2 cups of flour out of the 2 1/4 cups flour. 1/4 cup cocoa powder. 1 teaspoon baking soda, 1 teaspoon vanilla, and 2 eggs. So I added the powdered stuff first and then put the liquid, the vanilla and the eggs on top as an attempt to not have flour go flying out of here as soon as I start my mixer. Get a little bit of poofing, a little bit get kicked out, but what can you do? Try not to kind of fling some of the dough off of the paddle. Scrape the bowl down. Not like that. It's a pretty heavy, sticky dough. That's probably good enough. Let's make sure it's all thoroughly integrated. Start adding your cherries. And scrape down the sides again. Now let's add our chocolate chips. So that was 2 cups of dark chocolate chips. You can use whatever kind you like. You can substitute anything you want for the cherries as well. You know, make this your own. Looks like I gotta scrape it down just a smidge. So I make sure everything is well integrated. It's looking pretty good though. Another quick mix and we'll start putting it out on the cookie sheets. I think that's pretty good. Unfortunately, it's not safe to lick the beaters. They found salmonella in eggs, which a lot of people know about. But something I learned recently is that flour can be contaminated with E. coli. Since there's a risk of E. coli in your flour, plus salmonella in your eggs, it's just better not to lick the beaters. I mean, I loved doing that as a kid, but I don't want to become ill. It's just not worth it. Especially because so many bacteria and stuff are drug resistant. It may be difficult to find an antibiotic, so just don't. So you're gonna want balls of dough that are about a tablespoon of dough. If you want larger cookies, feel free to do whatever size you like. I like to be fairly consistent in smaller cookies. I just scoop it out with a regular spoon and drop them on the sheet. I stagger them a bit so it helps them keep from oozing into one another. Now I use bar pans. Using cookie sheets works just fine. I just didn't have cookie sheets that were consistently the same, so I was finding I was having different baking times. So it seems to work better to just use the bar pans we also had. As long as you have a flat surface that you can put your dough on, you have places to make cookies. I'm gonna bake these separately. I'm just doing this because sticky hands and I don't want to wash my hands anymore than I have to. The test batch made about 50 cookies. This has a little more cherry in it, so it might be a little bit more than that. But it's approximately 4 dozen cookies at the size I make them. That one's a little big, so I'm gonna put a little for that one. So we got whole chunks of cherry and chocolate chips. Pretty excited to see how these turn out. So I'm gonna stick these in the oven. We're gonna bake these at 375. Now, they need to bake for 8 to 10 minutes. Based on our oven, when we tested the other night, it was 10 minutes. So I'm setting a timer for 10 minutes. Our timer has gone off, it's time to pull them out of the oven. Now to put the next batch in. Set another 10-minute timer. We're gonna let these cool a little bit, then we can move them onto the other cooling rack. Okay, did end up with a couple that kind of grew together, but they'll still eat the same. Oh, I broke that one. Put them on a cooling rack to cool thoroughly. There's a lot of butter in these, so they don't stick. Just kind of nice. If you are concerned, you can put parchment paper down or a silicone baking mat. But you can see there's quite a lot of oil on here from the butter. The chocolate is still molten. Yep, I'm gonna pull this off here because it's cool enough. And pull the next ones out. It's funny, I did this recipe a couple days ago and I didn't have any of them growing together. But this time, because I'm on camera, I have ones that mush together. What you gonna do, right? Yeah, I think this is cool enough. I can probably measure out the next batch. And this will be the last of it. Got most of them in the first 2 trays. That's what we have the rubber scrapers for. Yeah, that's gonna have to be good enough. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's wash the sticky off first. 10 minutes, and in the meantime, let's check to see if these are cool enough. It's a good thing they are, because I grabbed the metal with my hand. Yeah, back here, just a little cookie. No escapees. Okay, last one, time to come out. Now that they are out and cool enough, I brought Scott in and he can help me evaluate the latest version of this recipe. So help yourself.
Let's check this one right here. It looks really tasty. I definitely like the additional cherry amount.
It seems to have distributed much more throughout, because you can actually see pieces in the cookies. Those were really amazingly done. These definitely make good special occasion cookies because they're not really cheap to make with all the cherries in them.
With the cherries and the high quality cocoa we use.
And dark chocolate. Dark chocolate's a lot harder to find. I mean, don't be afraid to experiment. I made this up just because I thought, ooh, that sounds good.
And they are.
Go to the recipes, kind of put things together. That's how you learn. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. Until next time, be curious, keep an open mind, and never stop learning.